لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه والأجمعين. أما بعد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. صدق الله العظيم. Indeed, the praise is for Allah, and therefore we praise Him. We seek His help, His assistance exclusively. We seek His forgiveness, and we seek refuge with Allah from the evil which emanates from within ourselves and the harm thereof. We give open testimony that there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah. Highly glorified is He. He has no partner in the dominion of His creation. And we give further testimony that Muhammad, to whom the Quran was revealed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is His servant and messenger. Peace and prayers be upon him, upon his family, upon his companions, and all those who gather in righteousness and follows thereafter. Ameen. O you who believe, have taqwa for Allah, as it is His right to receive taqwa, and die not except as Muslims. Surely Allah speaks the truth. Assalamu alaikum and Eid Mubarak. Allah has favored us in so many ways, and one of those is that when we observe the Eid, that Allah gives us 3 days to take it all in. And that is just one of the many mercies that we've been given. And it is always a mercy that we're able to gather for Salat al-Jummah. We thank Allah for inclining our hearts towards remembrance and allowing our limbs to bear witness to that inclination. We thank Allah for removing any obstacles and obstructions that may have been in our path and allowing us all to be here today at this time. We pray for the well-being of all those who, for no fault of their own, who are inclined to be in an assembly like this, but were unable to do so. So may Allah reward them for their intentions, and may Allah also alleviate any ill or any challenges that the believers are undergoing at this moment, inshallah. Ameen. So we thank Allah. We thank Allah. We can never thank Allah enough for the many blessings, the mercies that He has bestowed upon us. We find ourselves at a very interesting time. While we may have a celebratory mood while we're reflecting upon this Eid al-Adha and its significance for us, not just as individuals, but as a human family, that there are things going on right now which look to or seek to separate once again the human family, which seek to polarize. And during this time, it's very important for us to remember that we are supposed to keep the proper disposition, a disposition that is befitting a believer. And that is a disposition of victory. That is a disposition of victory. When Allah tells us that the believers, indeed the believers are victorious. Indeed the believers are victorious. Well, it's important for us to put that victory in context, because that is the first victory. It is the most important victory, but it is the first victory, because we also understand that the true victory is not something that is going to come to us in this life. The true victory doesn't come to us in this life. We may see Allah's favors, Allah's mercy. We may see the rewards of our labor, the rewards of our intentions, just as our being here today is an expression of that favor that Allah has given to each of us. But the true victory, it doesn't come here. It doesn't come here. So we'll get more into that in a moment. I want to begin by reminding us of Allah's word in Surah Ali Imran. This is the 186th ayah. I'm going to read the Arabic quickly and give the English rendering. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ وَلَا تَسْمَعُونَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا أَذًى كَثِيرًا وَإِنْ تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. صدق الله العظيم. Says, Bismillah, ye shall certainly be tried and tested in your possessions and in your personal selves. And ye shall certainly hear much that will grieve you from those who received the book before you, and from those who worship many gods. But if you persevere patiently and guard against evil, then that will be a determining factor in all affairs. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Not very celebratory. Right? You shall certainly be tried and tested. Not very celebratory. Right? To think about the test, but isn't that what we have been celebrating? The test that was given to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam? The test that he was given, a momentous test, tried not just in the fruits of his labor, but really within his own self. And what better symbol or metaphor or representation of ourselves and our children, our beloved children. So he was tested in himself, not just in his wealth, but tested in himself. And of course, he rose to the occasion of that test, a momentous test, right? Because it says at the end, it says but if you persevere patiently and guard against evil, then that will be a determining factor in all affairs. So what do we take from this? Well, before we even go into what do we take from this, it's also important for us to consider, because as I begin by saying that we're at a time where we're celebrating, but there are things that are happening in our nation right now. As a matter of fact, a couple of things. One that is dealing with a Supreme Court of the United States decision regarding affirmative action in higher education, that once again polarizes, once again denies the harm that has been done generationally, and seeks to continue that harm. All right, so there are a lot of folks who've heard about this news, they've been talking about it, and they're wondering, and they're hearing once again, here's the trial. This is where we find ourselves. We're hearing bad news from those who received the book before us. But Allah also tells us something about those who received the book before us in terms of our perspective and how to keep the proper disposition as believers. He says that for us we are to beware, or he speaks of those who write the book with their own hands. Those who write the book with their own hands. Now see, the beauty of this deen that Allah has given us and the leadership that we have benefited from for so many years, and the thinking that we do with the mercy that Allah has given us, right? This intellect, is that we understand that there's more for us to uncover than what is presented to us. So when we hear this statement, those who write the book with their own hands, right? We're not infantile people. We're not in an immature state when we think about that as just as one person sitting down trying to write the book, right? Trying to write the book. We understand that gems are going to be dropped. We understand that hints are going to be given from the institutions that Shaitan upholds and uses. So they're going to use language. They're going to use language that is going to give away the plot. So we can't have an exact conversation right now, but if you understand, if you've heard the term the king's hand, or the hand of the king, right? They use it in fiction. There was a popular show that used the term. So it was a book of Fire and Ice or Game of Thrones. The king's hand, who had control over all of the council, the small council, or the leadership of society. the king's hand, who is responsible for keeping everybody in line, right? Doing the will of the king. So what do we gather from this fiction right here? This is those who use their institutional power to write laws that govern the people. They write laws, they make policies that continue a particular model of society that they want to see, right? So this is, when we read this, we're not reading history that you will certainly hear much from the people, from those who received the book before you, that will grieve you, right? This is not just a matter of us hearing small talk from our Christian brothers and sisters. That's the immature look at this. The mature view, as we see, we are people who understand the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the sacrifice of Hajar, the sacrifice of Ismail, Allah's peace be on them both, are sacrifices that led to the establishment of a house, of an institution that was for humanity. We're talking about the Kaaba. We consider what has been given, how many things have been given for the benefit of humanity. How many structures have been erected for the benefit of humanity? Very few. We have structures that we point to, that people go to, particular people, right? Some folks may go to the Wailing Wall. Some folks want to go to the Basilicas, and folks want to go to different historical points. But they were not erected with the intent of bringing together the human family. They were not erected with the intent of preserving the pure worship of Allah, right? And this is the victory that we have been given. This is the victory. Once again, we always wind up slipping in something from Surah Al-Kahf, because we're always reading this Thursday nights, right? Friday mornings. Allah says that the earth, right? Much of what we see is an illusion. What is the illusion? The illusion is relative to the institution that Shaitan represents. The institution that Shaitan represents, which is to change the perception of what is the actual reality of life. What is the goal of life? Right? How do we order our lives? How do we determine what victory is? A simple yet profound thing to simply understand La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. That in itself is a victory. That is the first victory that we have. But that is the victory upon which all other victories are contingent. There's no victory without understanding that those principles, that first, that Tawheed, without having that, there's no victory after that. Because what does Allah say at the very end of Surah Al-Kahf? It said, those who have spent their lives while they thought they were acquiring good, thought they were doing good for themselves, but they missed the boat because they didn't have Tawheed. They didn't have the most important thing in their lives. So they didn't have victory. So when they heard these distressing calls, the distressing messages that came from those who had power, who had institutional power, they were shook. When they were tested, and understand that we celebrate this test. We celebrate the test. We don't run from the test. We celebrate the test, because that is the pattern. That is the pattern. That is the prophetic tradition, which means it's a community tradition, right? Because we don't look at, we've been taught, we see the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam, on Allah's peace be on all of them. We see them as communities, not just as individuals. These are models of communities, which means these are communities that were tested, not just individuals. There's a community test that goes along with this. If you align yourself with leadership, then you reap the benefit, and you also have to endure some of the trials that come along with that. We know that the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, Allah's peace be on all of them, many of them, they underwent terrible, terrible oppressions, tortures and boycotts, right? Because they aligned themselves with the message of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at the end, right, at the end of his prophethood, right, once victory is clear for everybody else, then you got people running to take shahada because they want to also benefit. They want to be on the winning side. They want to reap the benefit of their association. So these are communities. We have to see this in a community concept. So I mentioned earlier, I said the words the Supreme Court. Very important for us Muslims to remember, especially once again, this is the third day of Eid, right? We're remembering a monumental example of sacrifice and faith and fortitude and perseverance. All right, particularly, I really want to go more into our Mother Hajar, perhaps at a later time, but it's important for us to remember that the sacrifices that were made, the way that the challenge was met, this is a model for us. Right? This is a model for us. And what it means is that we too have to be prepared to meet our challenge, to meet our test. Right? Not to run from the test, not to seek the luxury, not to seek the matter of fact, Allah tells us, no, He says, content yourself with those who seek Allah's countenance. Right? Content yourself with those who seek Allah. Right? Not those who seek after the glory and the pomp of this life. Those who follow after their lesser selves. So my point was that the words that we use, the words matter. We say Supreme Court. It's important that we add on of the United States. It's important that we add, right? These words matter. The words that we use, they fashion our reality. As I said, our first victory is what? Our first victory is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Our final victory is when we are standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are dispensed, we are, and you know it, it's not something that when you get there, you're in doubt, right? Because Allah speaks about those, says they will apprehend, they will be quite aware that they will see the fire and they'll know that's where I'm going. This is where I'm going. So we want to, they're on their way to court and they know they're convicted. The final court, the final judge, right? We know Allah is the judge. Right? The final judge. So the court that we have to be most concerned about, the Supreme Court, is going to be that court, that audience that we're going to, each and every one of us is going to have before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are going to be judged on how we met the challenges, how we responded to those things that we heard, how we're going to respond to the challenges, the threats to our material wealth, the threats to our personal selves, our families. How do we respond to those things? Do we respond to those things with the feeling that, oh well, I got no power, I got to do whatever they say I got to do, I just got to go along to get along? Or are we going to follow the example of Prophet Ibrahim, alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Are we going to follow an example where, just consider this for a moment. Prophet Ibrahim, we think about this old man, right? This old man who has had faith, his faith has been present with him, right? And in front of the people, since he was a young man, a teen, 13, 14 years old. and he has endured the sacrifice of his relationship with his father. He has endured separation from his people. He has endured time out, the traveling and the aging and wanting to have an heir and to finally get an heir, and then to find out, to have this vision once his son comes of age that, you got to let him go. And to be resolved with that. Now, by contrast, consider Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whose influence has been recognized, who people are starting to listen to, right? There's a movement that is going on. And the chiefs of these clans, of these tribes, they recognize that this represents a problem for us. So we got to do something to stop it. So we're not going to come at him. We're not going to come at him and ask him, to give up a family member, anything like that. But we're gonna try to come to him and say, we're going to give you, right? We'll make you the chief. We'll make you the final arbiter over everything. We will make you the top man. And what is his response? His response, considering that for most people, especially in this day and age where branding is that's all you hear about now, people. I'm branding, I'm trying to build my brand. I'm trying to get more followers. You're at a point now where you've got more followers. You got people coming to you. You got the influencers, the big businesses coming to you. And they're saying, look, we're going to go into business with you. We will make you the CEO. We just don't want you giving this message. You will have more followers than you can imagine. And his response, he says, if you were to put the sun in one hand and the moon in the other, right, never would I stop. Never would I stop preaching these words that I've been commanded to from my Lord. Right? There's no power that you can give to me. There's nothing that you can give to me. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, there's nothing that I will not give to you. I'm willing to give everything that I have for you to Allah. And Prophet Muhammad, peace and praise be upon him, is saying, there's nothing that you can give me to keep me from Allah. So this works on both ends. So that is a part of the test. The test is not us. It's not when we're down. The test is when we have come into some semblance of what we think our lives are supposed to look like. The test comes when we have come to a point where we feel like I'm just starting to get my groove on. Now I know who I am. I'm now starting to become successful. My children are doing well. I've got this nice house. I got a nice car. I'm doing well in my professional life. That's when your test is going. That's when your test. That's when you are tested within yourself. You're tested within your material resource. You're tested in your social standing. How do we respond to that test? If we respond with anything other than perseverance, with dedication to Allah, if anything other than taqwa, anything other than recognizing that our final victory, that our true victory lays with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything other than that, then there is no victory. Then we don't have that first victory. Allahu Akbar. So indeed, the believers are victorious. Right? But it's conditional. And it's not the final victory, it's the first victory. So we've been put in a position because of our belief, because Allah has inclined our hearts towards belief, has inclined our hearts towards His book and His messenger. We're in a position to receive the test of life in the proper way. We're in a position to receive the language that is used to decipher it and to put it in its proper context, and to not lose sight of the true reality. The Supreme Court, our Supreme Court lies with Allah. But we also have a responsibility while we are here. We're not people who are divorced from the struggle of this life. I want to quickly say, as I close this first portion of the Khutba, just ask yourself, what do you think Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what do you think he would be advocating for if he were amongst us today? What are the issues? What are the concerns that he would be lifting up and championing if he were amongst us today? Would he simply be calling people to prayer? Would that be the end of his invitation? Absolutely not. He would certainly uphold the principles that he has given us. Right? Prayer would certainly it is a pillar, right? There's no getting around that. But he came as a mercy to mankind, as a mercy to all of the worlds, as a correction, right, to injustice and to oppression, as a champion for freedom, for justice. And because we ride with the prophet, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are living, that we are responding to the challenges of this day in ways that reflect that allegiance, in ways that reflect our sincerity of that shahadatain that we take. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Thumma Alhamdulillah. The praise is for Allah, the praise is for Allah, and then the praise is for Allah. As we close, I want to read another short ayah, same surah, Ali Imran. This is the 141st ayah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Says Allah's object also is to purge those that are true in faith and to deprive of blessing those that resist faith. For context, let me go back forward. I'm going to read the 140. It says, if a wound hath touched, Bismillah, if a wound hath touched you, be sure a similar wound hath touched the others. Such days of varying fortunes we give to men, and men by turns, that Allah may know those that believe, and that he may take to himself from your ranks martyr witnesses to truth, and Allah loveth not those that do wrong. Allah's object also is to purge those that are true in faith and to deprive of blessing those that resist faith. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. So the setbacks, the wounds, the difficulties, all these things, they serve multiple purposes, and one of them is to purge. It is to perfect. It is to prove our faith. Right? There is no saying that you are a believer and not having to deal with something that tests your belief, right? That demands you to show your belief. There's no simply saying I'm a Muslim and not having an action that also supports that. So very simple. So we keep this in mind, and we receive whatever difficulties that may come our way, whatever challenges that may come our way. We keep this in mind, and we ask that when we enter into those situations, we ask that Allah purify us. Let these situations be a moment for us to deepen our faith, for us to perfect our faith, right? And for those things, never for us to be overwhelmed. And that's why we ask for Allah. We ask Allah never to place upon us a burden that we do not have capacity to bear. But Allah tells us, says, I do not. Right? Says Allah does not place a burden, any burden on the soul greater than it has capacity to bear. Right? Which means that we should not be placing burdens on ourselves which are greater than our capacity. Right? So what Allah places on us is not the same as what we place on ourselves. We are in a position. I want to Okay, I'm gonna say it really quick. I just want to remind us of the power, the influence that we have, and oftentimes we are not even really aware of that power. We are at a position now where our presence here in this nation, in this country, as Muslims, it is going to be judged based on what happens within the next 10 years. And by that, I mean, if we look at the history of look at the civil rights movement, we know that the Black church was an integral part of the civil rights movement, right? To bring us up to bring about the Civil Rights Act was in 64, 65, followed by the immigration, right? Which all these things have shaped our nation in this particular day. Our people gave the moral fiber, the moral backing, the moral argument for equality in society. We're in a position now where we're gonna have to ask ourselves, are we ready to assume a position of leadership in responding to today's challenges, in providing spiritual leadership, spiritual argument that brings about not the same, but the appropriate responses to the curtailment of opportunity, of equality, and education, finance. They just hit the student loans, right? Hit those as well, right? Our high court did this, affirmative action, overturned, right? And there's so many other things that are going to be coming. And it is incumbent upon us to have a response that is rooted in our understanding that we are there's one human family, one Allah, right? That has given us the responsibility for stewardship of society, that has given us our deen to be a check over all other religions, to make sure that those who say that they are acting with the book or through the book, that they are doing so properly. They're not doing it something they done writ themselves. They're going off the deep end and simply trying to benefit one particular group, keep us in one class, right? So there's no class movement. We're stuck. We're stuck in time. So we should see the challenges of today, the news of today, as a challenge for us to mobilize, to move forward, and do the things that we know our beloved prophet, peace and prayers be upon him, would do. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه هو الغفور الرحيم.